the money from? Well, they already have it, Rod. Really? Evidently not if we've got fewer millionaires today than we did 4 years ago. So who's got it again? And the government is spending money it doesn't have. And somebody's got to pay that back. Who's going to pay that? The rich. When? We already know. And here's another fact. We already know that you could confiscate the wealth, 100% of the wealth, of the 50% of the people that pay 98% of the taxes in this country. Just confiscate every last dime, from their house to any paper to the pens on their desk. Confiscate it all. And you would not have enough to run this government for more than 3 months. And you haven't even come close to even touching the $16 trillion in debt. So again, looking at the facts, can you explain to me how taxing anybody, including the rich, more is going to help those on the bottom? The truth is, it's not. And the only people that are going to get hurt by taxing the rich are everyone.
My name is Ronald Reagan. I have been asked to talk on several subjects that have to do with the problems of the day. Now, back in 1927, an American socialist, Norman Thomas, 6 times candidate for president on the Socialist Party ticket, said the American people would never vote for socialism. But he said under the name of liberalism, the American people will adopt every fragment of the socialist program. There are many ways in which our government has invaded the precincts of private citizens, the method of earning a living. One of the traditional methods of imposing statism or socialism on a people has been by way of medicine. It's very easy to disguise a medical program as a humanitarian project. Most people are a little reluctant to oppose anything that suggests medical care for people who possibly can't afford it. James Madison, in 1788, speaking to the Virginia Convention, said, "Since the general civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of the abridgment of the freedom of the people by gradual and silent encroachment of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations." Now, in our country, under our free enterprise system, we have seen medicine reach the greatest heights that it has in any country in the world. Today, the relationship between patient and doctor in this country is something to be envied any place. The privacy, the care that is given to a person, the right to choose a doctor, the right to go from one doctor to the other. But let's also look from the other side at the freedom the doctor loses. A doctor would be reluctant to say this. Well, like you, I'm only a patient, so I can say it in his behalf. The doctor begins to lose freedoms. It's like telling a lie, and one leads to another. First, you decide that the doctor can have so many patients. They're equally divided among the various doctors by the government. But then the doctors aren't equally divided geographically. So a doctor decides he wants to practice in one town, and the government has to say to him, you can't live in that town. They already have enough doctors. You have to go someplace else. And from here, it's only a short step to dictating where he will go. This is a freedom that I wonder whether any of us have the right to take from any human being. Take it into your own occupation or that of your husband. All of us can see what happens once you establish the precedent that the government can determine a man's working place and his working methods, determine his employment. From here, it's a short step to all the rest of socialism, to determining his pay. And pretty soon, your son won't decide when he's in school where he will go or what he will do for a living. He will wait for the government to tell him where he will go to work and what he will do. In this country of ours took place the greatest revolution that has ever taken place in world history, the only true revolution. Every other revolution simply exchanged one set of rulers for another. But here, for the first time in all the thousands of years of man's relation to man, a little group of men, the Founding Fathers, for the first time, established the idea that you and I had within ourselves the God-given right and ability to determine our own destiny. This freedom was built into our government with safeguards. We talk democracy today, and strangely we let democracy begin to assume the aspect of majority rule is all that is needed. Well, majority rule is a fine aspect of democracy, provided there are guarantees written in to our government concerning the rights of the individual and of the minorities. What can we do about this? Well, you and I can do a great deal. We can write to our congressmen, to our senators. We can say right now that we want no further encroachment on these individual liberties and freedoms. And at the moment, the key issue is we do not want socialized medicine. If you don't, this program, I promise you, will pass just as surely as the sun will come up tomorrow. And behind it will come other federal programs that will invade every area of freedom as we have known it in this country. Until, one day, as Norman Thomas said, we will awake to find that we have socialism. And if you don't do this, and if I don't do it, one of these days, you and I are going to spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
You're listening to The Rod Eccles Show.
Oh, yes, we are here until 9 p.m. this evening, and we will be back here tomorrow and Friday, 7 p.m. sharp. Hopefully tomorrow and Friday, 7 p.m. sharp. But in any case, until 9 p.m. this evening, 2 hours of nothing but factual, logical information for your cranium. You get a lot of people out there. They like to feed your soul. Well, we're not in church. I'm not going to feed your soul here on this show. Not normally. I'm going to feed your cranium. And for those of you in Rush Limbaugh's Rio Linda, that's your brain. I'm gonna tweak that logical switch and try to turn it on. It's amazing when you see somebody. You get the logic. You literally see their eyes light up. It's like, wow. And then all you have to do is sit back and say, uh-huh. Because it isn't my goal to get everybody out there in the entire country to think and believe as I do. Absolutely not. My goal is to get everybody to think logically. You were given that capability by God himself. My goal is just to get you to use a gift that God gave you. Think logically. Because quite frankly, if you think logically, we are going to automatically agree on the macro. Now, we may disagree on the micro, and I have to say this every time. Look, our founding fathers were that way. They all obviously agreed on the macro. England bad, America good, to put it in simplistic terms. We need to separate from England. Yeah, they agreed on that. That was the macro. We need to be free, have a free people. Have independence. That was a macro ideology that they all agreed on. What they vehemently disagreed about sometimes is the micro, how best to achieve that democratic free society utopia. So some saw, quite frankly, there was one camp. You had two major camps back in the day, if you will. You had one camp that said you need a good overall federal government whose role is very limited and does not interfere with the states individually, but just strong enough to keep the union together and to protect it. That's it. And then you had the other camp that basically said, no, we need a strong centralized government to make sure that the states do not trample on people's freedoms and become dictators. So there were these two camps, and they had to compromise, and they called it the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. So nobody got what they wanted, 100%. as far as the details of achieving what they all wanted to achieve. But what they did agree upon is that whether it be the state or the Fed, they put it in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, they believed government as a whole needed to have limits on your life. That was the macro. They all agreed upon that. No, we don't need government telling us how to live our daily lives. Hell, that's what we got away from King George. We didn't want that. We want to stay away from high taxation. We got away from that. From King George. He was taxing us to death. We don't want anything to do with that. We got tired of taxation without representation. And that's specifically aimed at you people who do not believe that a corporation is a person. So you want to tax an entity without giving it any kind of representation. We got away from that. That's not good to have taxation without representation of any kind. I mean, some of the founding fathers tried to insist, oh no, only landowners can be voters. And the camp that won this said, no. There are a lot of people in this country that are not landowners and probably never will be landowners, but they have a legitimate stake in how this country's run. So, they won out. Well, all male citizens of a certain age back then had the opportunity and chance to legally vote. And then later, slaves were freed. Slaves got to vote, even though Democrats tried to keep them from voting. And women got the right to vote. And then they lowered the voting age to 18. So even mind-numbed robot children, teenagers, could vote. But it was never looked upon, again, as only landowners should vote. Well, obviously, the logic is if you live or have property in a particular municipality or town, you should have a voice in that town. If you don't, i.e. college students only there for college, and you're there for what? September, October, November, most of December you're gone. January, February, March, April, and what? You got you're not even there all of March because of spring break all over the place. And then you're home or someplace else. No, you don't. You should not be able to vote in that. You're not and you're only there for 2 or 4 years if you stay in school. You should have no say in that community as far as how it's run government-wise. You're not paying anything there. Well, I spend my money there, Ron. I rent a house or an apartment. And every time I shop, I'm paying it there. You're not an invested citizen there. That's the key difference. You're not an invested key citizen. An apartment or a homeowner, he owns an apartment building. He's got 4 apartments, but he doesn't live in the town. He lives in the next town, but he has 4 apartments. Yeah, well, he pays taxes. He wants to make sure that his home is protected from fire by having a solid fire department. He wants to make sure that there is no crime by having a solid police department. He wants to make sure that the garbage is picked up. He wants to make sure that the utilities, the sewer and the water lines are maintained. He wants to make sure that proper oversight on neighbors' properties, be it, what they are properly looked after so the value of his property can continue to rise. He's got a vested interest in that community. I know there are slumlords and things like that. I fully understand that. But trust me, they're the minority of landowners. So college student, I'm sorry. I was once a college student. I had no vested interest in the town that I attended college. None. None of my friends went to the various towns that they had no interest in those towns. They were there for one specific reason, to get